Hello, church. Welcome to this week's message. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. It is great to be with you again this week as we continue in Jim Logan's book, Reclaiming Surrendered Ground. We're talking more about moms and wives this week. Talking about areas of vulnerability. And last week we talked about proper trust. We talked about how God never tells a woman to trust her husband, to put full trust in him. If in our sin, we're not trustworthy. I mean, that's just a simple fact. And if you put your trust in a person, at some point, they will let you down. It always happens. We put people up on pedestals all the time, and we do things, especially like celebrities, sports figures, that kind of stuff. It's the same with us. I mean, those people are just like we are. And so if you idolize people, if you put your trust in them, inevitably they will do something, say something that will let you down. And so you have to be careful. The other thing you have to be careful of is women have a mothering instinct, right? They have a nurture side to them that men don't have. And that mothering instinct that you have, that's for your kids. It's not for your husband. And some husbands or some men will claim, at least before the marriage, that they'll like that. They like that, to be mothered, to be babied. I'm telling you, those types of relationships, those types of marriage where wives mother their husbands, they're doomed to failure eventually. Because eventually the man will resent you for that. He might even say something like, you know what, you're just like your mother. So that's not for your marriage, it's for your kids. Women will try to protect their husbands from the consequences of life. Don't. Because all you're doing is preventing them from growing up and maturing into those roles of responsibility that God has for men. So don't do that. Stop trying to fix your husbands. And husbands, stop trying to fix your wives. It's not up to you to fix anything. Right? It's up to you to form a partnership. And in those areas where we are lacking, right, we turn those things over to God. Both need to release their spouses to God in those areas that are lacking. But trust means you trust God, right? You trust God's structure for a family, his roles for a wife and a husband, and you understand and know and rely on that he has the power to work things out in the areas that are lacking in your marriage. God is the only one with the ability to work things for his glory and the good of your family. So I'm going to bring up the dirty word now, right? This is the dirty word for some women, not all, but for some. Submission. Ooh, submission, right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean slavery, okay? It doesn't mean that the husband is in charge from a worldly term. But let's back up a step. If you're one of these wives that constantly worries about protecting their husbands and their kids, my question to you is, how's your stress life? How's your stress level? How's your stress level? I'm guessing it's off the charts. Because you know where that leads to? That constant worrying leads to fear. Because if you are constantly worrying that something bad is going to happen, eventually you're going to run out of fingers to put in the anxiety dike. You can't hold it back, and it's going to crush you at some point. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. But that's only part of the antidote, right? Part of the antidote is you got to turn your kids and your husband over to God and trust that God will protect them. Pray for that. Ask for that. God has made promises for a family and for marriages. Claim those promises. But it's only part of the antidote. The other part of this is submission to your husband, right? Proper submission, right? 1 Peter 3:5-6 says, for this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Right? Again, the husband is responsible for the spiritual health of the family. We established that weeks ago. Almost what? 15, 20 weeks ago? Now, he may need help, but let him lead. And again, it's not, I know people hear that and they just totally flip out. Again, especially today, in today's world. And that's, you have to put aside the worldly concept of leading and submitting and look at this from a spiritual concept and what God's responsibility is for wives and husbands. Right? You need to let him lead spiritually. And if he's not doing his job, then what do? You turn him over to God, right? Doesn't mean you don't talk about it, right? But do so as you're led by the Spirit. Because the last thing, trust me, the last thing men want to hear is that we suck at our jobs, especially when it comes to the family and our kids and our wives. We don't want to hear that, right? It may be true, and it may need to be talked about, but again, be led in the Spirit in how you do this. Right? Logan says, anxiety is to the spirit what pain is to the body. Right? You may get anxious from time to time, but it's really unhealthy to remain there. When I was dealing, those who have been part of this ministry and following this ministry for a long time know that I've struggled with anxiety, and I can tell you, anxiety and fear, it's really unhealthy. Really unhealthy. I've had symptoms of illnesses and anxiety that I've not had when I'm not anxious, right? And that it's covered by the blood of Jesus. I'm not trying to call anything down on me, but that's a fact, right? It will make you physically ill. You need to trust God with your husband and your kids. You need to exercise that quiet spirit we talked about last week, right? Don't give in to anxiousness, because that will open the door for Satan to gain a foothold. And through that anxiety, he will wreak havoc on your life and on your marriage and on your kids. Guarantee it. Right? Become the model in your household on how to deal with these stressful situations. But again, understand, husband has the responsibilities that you don't. And if he's not carrying out those responsibilities, and I know what that's like, right? Because we've had things a little backwards here from a, breadwinner thing and all that kind of stuff, right? We've had to work that out, and God's worked that out for us. But that's the deal, right? You have to take that to God and allow him to work and show you how to move into those roles that he has for you, and understand that they are roles that you will relish once you submit to him, to God, and allow him to guide you in those roles, right? You will relish those roles. Trust me. Trust me, right? Living the life that he has for you is way better than doing what you're doing right now if you're doing it on your own. Fiery trials, we all get those, right? We all get those. How we deal with them and our attitude in the midst of those things is hugely important as the trial itself. Because in spiritual warfare, you can, and women particularly, right? You can bet he's going to come at you guns blazing. 1 Peter 4:12 says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." How many times have you found yourself in a situation where you're like, what in the Lord's name is going on here? What is happening? You kind of feel like that from a worldly perspective right now, don't we? It's like, what is going on? Well, we know what's going on, right? Those who have discernment know what's going on. But fiery trials come at us from all angles. And for wives, they can come at you, well, for spouses in general, husbands and wives, it'll come at you from an unexpected source sometimes, and that's your spouse. Women, that could be your husbands. Right? Now, and we don't get attacked in the spirit. Okay? Jesus resides in the spirit. Right? They come at us in our souls, our emotions, our minds, our wills. Right? Satan will put thoughts in our heads that we will believe than to be true. Thoughts about your husband. What's he doing? Why is he out late? Why does he have this attitude? What is he doing with the kids? Satan will put these lies, and you'll see something and misinterpret it, and Satan will seize on that and twist it and turn it, and you'll end up believing something that that is absolutely not true. You'll hear something in his voice and you think he's got that attitude, and it's not. I'll give you a perfect example. We had here just recently, my wife said something to me in the morning, and it was first thing in the morning. She's trying to get on a call because she starts really early in the morning because she has people she has to talk to in India and Israel and all of that over in Europe and stuff. And she's got to talk to people in the Middle East, and it's got to be early enough so that everybody's kind of on a work schedule. So she'll start sometimes at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, she said something, and yeah, it was a little short, a little snippy, but it's like, okay, it's first thing in the morning, whatever, it's cool. But it wasn't cool, right? For me, because I started thinking about, whatever I started thinking about. It's like, why is she snapping at me while I'm out? I go walk the dogs then, and I have, 40 minutes to brood about it, right? I started to brood about it, but what I did was, it's like, I need to pray this through. Because I'm starting to think stupid stuff here. So I pray it through, and I come home, and I'm getting breakfast ready, and she comes down. She's like, hey, sorry, just was in a hurry this morning. Sorry, I kind of snapped at you. Everything was fine, And what she said was fine. It was the way she said it. And then, but I started thinking, well, how those thoughts go. But I prayed it off. And I had to do that because if not, I'm thinking all these things in my head. And it's like none of them were true. None of them were true. But Satan was latching onto that, and I had to pray it out. And so I prayed on the last half of the walk, got home, and God took care of it. So that's an example of you got to be careful, and you got to pray these things out and not let Satan grab hold of these things and twist and turn them. So, because women, you're really susceptible in your emotions, right? You're just more emotional than guys are, usually. I mean, I'm a big, crybaby too, but all right, I'm not going to go down that road, but like I get emotional as well, right? But women in general tend to be more emotional than men. And this is where Satan will come at you the hardest. Remember Eve, right? 2 Corinthians 11:3. But I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, your thoughts will be led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ. Right? Eve became convinced in her emotions that Satan's lies were true. Right? Remember, God didn't really say God didn't really say that. You're not going to surely die. He didn't mean that. She bought into it. So when this happens, you have to be on guard. 1 Peter 4:19 says, therefore, let those who suffer according to God's will entrust their souls to a faithful Creator while doing good. Excuse me. When these things come at you, you got to take them to God immediately. Children and dealing with children. Big piece of this. Generally, mothers spend more time with their kids than dads. Again, we were a little flipped here. I was a stay-at-home dad. But kids pick up on parents' attitudes, especially moms for some reason. I watched it happen here. They're more in tune to what mom's thinking and doing and how she's acting than they were with me. And they will pick up on your attitude toward your husband, toward life, toward God, toward your surroundings pretty quickly. And and that will imprint them. And so you need to be on top of your spiritual life because the effect that you have on your family is huge. You have the opportunity to display the fruits of the Spirit to your kids and show them what it's like to live a life of Christ living in you, especially in the first 5 years of their lives, because that sets a foundation. And I think I read it, it's been a while, but I read something somewhere where if a kid's not saved by 12, 13, 14, they're probably not going to get saved. So the groundwork you lay when they are at that age is increasingly important, immensely important. because that's where a solid foundation, a solid spiritual foundation is laid, whether you realize it or not. And one of the, one of the best words in laying this foundation, you know what one of those best words is? No. That's one of the best words in laying a foundation for your kids. No. Right? I know some of you are going, really? Are you serious? Yeah, no. Because if a kid's going to learn how important it is to submit to God, they have to learn early to submit to other authority. Right? Because at 5 years old, for the most part, they're not going to have that understanding of God's will, but they're going to understand no and yes and who's in charge from a parent perspective. I mean, if you think I'm losing my marbles, go have a look at what's going on in today's world with kids. Mobs of kids running amok in malls and at various places and just tearing stuff up. It is unbelievable, right? The number of people who say they're victims, it's everybody else's fault but their own. These are kids that weren't told no when they were young. Plain and simple. It's not hard, right? Kids haven't changed. That's the thing. Oh, kids have changed. Kids haven't changed. Kids are kids. Parents have changed. Parents aren't parenting. They're too busy being their kid's friend rather than being a parent, right? They throw them in front of a screen to keep them busy and to keep them quiet rather than develop a relationship with them and do stuff with them and read with them and teach them and be a parent. That's what's going on. Parents have changed. Kids have not changed. So if a child is going to learn how to submit to God, it starts with submitting to their parents, right? And the first significant person in their lives usually is their mother. She's the one who's going to teach their kids on how to respond to authority. Because once that framework is established, the rest is easy, comparatively speaking. But as a mom, your kids are going to develop these habits and attitudes that protect them from the enemy down the line. So how you deal with things around you while you're around your kids is going to affect them. And they're going to take notes from you. Whether consciously or subconsciously, they're going to take notes from you. So the three main things that you help your kids establish early on: obedience to authority, responsibility, and gratitude. Right? Thank you. Thank you. You know how many people, try this out. Try this out. Next time you go to the grocery store, whatever, get behind somebody as you're walking in. See if they hold the door for you. See if they hold the door for you. I would bet you the majority don't. That's what I find. Just no sense of anybody else but themselves. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy. But here's a question to ask yourself. Logan asks this in his book, Moms. Okay, here's a question for you. If you knew you would be removed from your daughter's life when she was 12 years old, what are the qualities you would most desire for her to have her be prepared for a successful adulthood? You think about that. And then that's what you need to be teaching your kids. Because instilling these traits early help your kids later in life. Right? How you deal with annoying parents or troublesome neighbors. How you deal with people in church. How you deal with your husband. How you deal with difficult situations. How you deal with strife and stress and all these things. They're going to take notes. Trust me, the number of things I've picked up from my parents is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. It just is. Right? It doesn't make it bad, doesn't make my parents bad. Right? It's just you pick up those things. And it's amazing what you pick up because you think it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be things like anxiety, stress, nerves, that kind of stuff. And yet all those types of things filter down to the kids. And it's amazing in my family, the behavior that I see, that I saw in, my parents or my cousin's parents or my grandparents or great-grandparents. It's wild. It's absolutely wild to look back. But that's what happens. So moms particularly, right? If you're spending a lot of time with your kids, you need to be spiritually on it. Because kids see everything, right? Kids see everything. And if you're in a position of authority as an adult, right? Like coaching soccer and stuff, kids watch that stuff all the time, and they pick up on it. So they're going to take their cues from you, how to deal with these situations. And so Proverbs 14:1 says, the wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down. Right? You can build it spiritually, or you can try to do it yourself. Think of Job, right? Job's wife, chapter 1. Everything falls apart. What does Job's wife say? Curse God and die. What's Job's response? You're talking like a foolish person. Because he knows if he gives in to her, there is no chance at recovering anything from a family perspective. Because while this has all happened, God is still God. God's still on the throne. And Job knows to not turn his back on God, because if there's any chance of recovery from what Job has experienced, it lies with God. That's one thing he's certain of. And so he tells his wife, gives her the hand. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. So remember, you and your husband are a team. You're a team. You have your roles to play. Accept those roles. Because again, you're going to find when you do that, your life is going to flourish, your family is going to flourish, your marriage is going to flourish. Right? Submitting to him is not an act of slavery. Okay? And if he's treating you like that, that's wrong. He needs to go back and read his Bible. Because that's not what it says. Right? Submission does not mean servitude. Remember that. But you both have a huge impact on your kids. So if you work together, complement one another, you can build strong spiritual protection for your family from the enemy. And you can create a wonderful marriage and a wonderful home where the main influence and the main impact is God.